I shouldn't have touched her, but she was crying. My brother's wife. Now there's a child growing inside her that might be mine. The cardboard boxes were stacked against the wall of their bedroom. His bedroom, when Claire called me. David's gone, she said, her voice cracking. He left yesterday. I need help packing his things. What she didn't say was that she needed someone to witness her grief, to validate that her pain was real. What she didn't know was how I'd secretly watched her for years, how I'd imagined her voice breaking in pleasure instead of pain. I should have said no. I should have made an excuse. But I didn't. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, already grabbing my keys. When I arrived, Claire's eyes were red-rimmed, her honey-brown hair twisted into a messy knot. She wore an old university sweatshirt, David's, probably, that hung to mid-thigh over leggings. Her bare feet patted across the hardwood floor as she led me inside. I'm sorry, I said, standing awkwardly in the entryway. About David. About everything. She turned to me, her hazel eyes narrowing slightly. Are you? Sorry about David? The question hung between us, dangerous and electric. We both knew David and I hadn't spoken in months, not since our last explosive argument about our father's estate. We both knew I thought he was selfish, impulsive. We both knew he didn't deserve her. I'm sorry you're hurting, I answered carefully. She nodded once, then turned away. There's whiskey in the kitchen. I can't drink it. Makes me sick lately. Help yourself. I followed her through the familiar house. Pictures of their wedding still hung on the walls. 5 years of marriage reduced to cardboard boxes and whiskey at 10 in the morning. I poured 2 fingers into a glass, knocked it back, then poured another before following Claire upstairs. The master bedroom looked like a war zone. Dresser drawers hung open, clothes strewn across the unmade bed. A wedding photo lay shattered on the floor, glass sparkling like accusatory stars. He didn't take much, Claire said, kicking a pair of expensive leather shoes. Just his laptop, passport, and enough clothes for a week. Said he needed space to think. That's David speak for I'm sleeping with someone else, but keeping my options open. I didn't disagree. My brother had always been skilled at keeping his options open. Let's just get this done, I said, setting my whiskey on the dresser and grabbing an empty box. Where do you want his stuff? Storage unit, she said. I already rented one. I'm selling the house. Selling? Claire. I can't stay here, James. She picked up a framed photo of them in Paris, studied it for a moment, then dropped it face down into a box. Everything here is contaminated. We worked in silence for nearly an hour, the only sounds the scrape of hangers being removed from the closet and the thud of books being packed away. Every so often, I'd sip my whiskey, feeling the pleasant warmth spread through my chest. It was easier to pack up my brother's life than I'd expected. Easier to imagine him gone for good. Claire worked methodically, her movements tight and controlled. But when she opened his nightstand drawer, she froze. What is it? I asked, moving closer. She held up a small velvet box, then opened it to reveal a pair of diamond earrings. Anniversary gift, she said hollowly. For next month. 6 years. She laughed, a brittle sound that fractured the air between us. He buys me diamonds while he's planning to leave. The tears came then, sudden and violent. Her shoulders shook as she clutched the earrings. I set down the box I was holding and moved to her, placing my hands on her shoulders. She was so small beneath my palms. Claire, I said softly, he's an idiot. She turned, pressing her face into my chest, the jewelry box still clutched in her fist. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling the heat of her through the sweatshirt, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. We'd never been this close before. In 5 years of family dinners and holiday gatherings, we'd shared quick hugs and casual cheek kisses. Nothing like this desperate embrace. I wasted so much time, she whispered against my shirt. So many years trying to be what he wanted. You're perfect as you are, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. She pulled back slightly, looking up at me. Her hazel eyes were luminous with tears, her lips parted. Time seemed to stretch between us, elastic and dangerous. "You've never said anything like that to me before," she said quietly. "I've never been alone with you when you're crying," I replied. It wasn't the complete truth. I hadn't said it because I'd never allowed myself to cross that line, to acknowledge what I'd felt since the first time David had brought her home. I hadn't said it because she was my brother's wife. She was still my brother's wife. I dropped my hands and stepped back. "We should finish packing." Claire wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "I need a break. And you need more whiskey." She took my hand, a casual touch that sent electricity up my arm, and let me back downstairs to the kitchen. She poured me another drink, then filled a glass with water for herself. "You know what's strange? I'm not even sad that he's gone. I'm sad about what that says about our marriage. 5 years, and I feel relief." I leaned against the counter, watching her. In the kitchen light, I could see the shadows beneath her eyes, the tension in her jaw. She'd lost weight in the months since I'd seen her last. "When did it start falling apart?" I asked. "Maybe it was always broken. Maybe we just got good at pretending." She took a sip of water. "David and I, we look good on paper. Made sense to our families. But there was always something missing. Passion." The word hung between us, loaded with implications. She met my eyes steadily. Among other things, honesty, trust, the feeling that if I showed him who I really was, he'd still want me. "And who are you really, Claire?" She set down her glass. "Someone who's tired of being careful, of being good." She moved closer until I could see the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. "Why did you and David stop speaking?" The question caught me off guard. "You know why? The dispute over dads." "No," she interrupted. "The real reason." I swallowed hard, the whiskey burning in my stomach. "Ask David." "I'm asking you." The tension between us was unbearable, a living thing with teeth and claws. I finished my drink in one swallow, welcoming the bite of alcohol. "He knew how I felt about you," I said finally. "He always knew." Claire's breath caught, a small sound in the quiet kitchen. "And how do you feel about me, James?" Instead of answering, I set down my glass and walked past her, back toward the stairs. I needed distance, clarity, but she followed me, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. "Don't walk away from me," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I've had enough of men walking away." I stopped at the foot of the stairs, turning to face her. "What do you want me to say, Claire? That I've wanted you since the moment we met? That every time I watched you with my brother, I hated him a little? That I'm standing here right now, thinking about how much I want to touch you, and hating myself for it?" The words hung between us, irrevocable. She moved closer until she was standing on the bottom step, her face level with mine. "Yes," she whispered. "That's exactly what I want you to say." When her lips met mine, it was like a dam breaking. 5 years of restraint washed away in an instant. My hands found her waist, pulling her against me as her arms wrapped around my neck. She tasted like salt and possibility, her tongue sliding against mine with an urgency that made my head spin. "We can't," I murmured against her mouth, even as my hands slipped beneath the sweatshirt to find the warm skin of her back. "We already are," she answered, her fingers tangling in my hair. I lifted her, her legs wrapping around my waist as I carried her up the stairs. In some distant part of my mind, I knew we were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed, that what we were about to do would change everything. But Claire's mouth was on my neck, her hands pulling at my shirt, and I couldn't remember why I should care. We fell onto the bed in the guest room, not the bed she'd shared with David, our limbs tangling as we pulled at each other's clothes. Her sweatshirt came off, revealing a simple cotton bra. I kissed the soft skin of her stomach, the curve of her hip, the hollow between her collarbones. When I unhooked her bra, her hands gripped my shoulders, her nails leaving half-moon indentations in my skin. "Are you sure?" I asked, hovering above her. Her eyes met mine, clear and certain. "I've never been more sure of anything." After we laid tangled in the sheets, her head on my chest, my fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, painting stripes across our bodies. Outside, I could hear a lawnmower, children playing, the ordinary sounds of Sunday afternoon, as if the world hadn't shifted on its axis. David suspected, Claire said quietly. He never had proof, but he knew how you looked at me. It was another weapon in his arsenal, the idea that his own brother wanted his wife. I tensed beneath her. Is that what this was? A way to get back at him? She raised herself on one elbow, looking down at me with fierce eyes. No, God, no. This was about us, you and me. This was about finally being honest. And what happens tomorrow? I asked, running a finger along her jawline. Next week? When David decides he's had enough space and wants to come home. Claire sat up, pulling the sheet around her. He's not coming home. Not to me. I filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. That's why he left. The revelation hung in the air between us. 3 weeks ago? Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to do it for myself, not for anyone else. She turned to face me fully. I didn't plan this, James. I didn't call you here to seduce you. But I've spent years pretending not to see how you look at me, pretending I didn't feel the same way. The same way. A smile touched her lips. Why do you think I always asked about you? Why I made sure to sit next to you at family dinners? Why I called you today, instead of one of my friends? I pulled her down to me, kissing her deeply. We made love again, slower this time, learning each other's bodies with a deliberate tenderness that made my chest ache. Afterward, as twilight gathered in the corners of the room, we talked, really talked, about the years of silence and longing, about David's increasing emotional distance, about what might come next. Stay, she said as I started to dress. Please. So I stayed. That night, and the next, and the one after that. We finished packing David's things together, clearing space for a new story to begin. I helped her prepare the house for sale, painting over the marks on the walls, fixing the broken drawer in the kitchen. At night, we cooked dinner and drank wine, just one glass for her, talking about our childhoods, our dreams, the people we wanted to become. 2 weeks stretched into a month. I started bringing clothes to her house, then books, then my favorite coffee mug. We were careful not to tell anyone yet. Not while her divorce was still being processed, not while the wound of David's departure was still fresh in our families. But in the privacy of what was becoming our home, we built something that felt solid and true. Then came the morning I found Claire in the bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub, a plastic stick in her hand. What is it? I asked, though I already knew. She looked up at me, her expression unreadable. I'm pregnant. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. How? We've been careful. Not careful enough, apparently. She set the test on the counter. Or maybe the universe has a twisted sense of humor. I sat beside her on the edge of the tub, our shoulders touching. How far along? 5 weeks, maybe 6. I'd have to see a doctor to be sure. The calculation was immediate and unavoidable. 5 or 6 weeks. Right when David left. Right when we first. It could be his, I said, the words like glass in my throat. Claire was silent for a long moment. Yes, it could be. We sat there, the implications expanding between us like a living thing. A child, David's or mine. A complication neither of us had anticipated. If it was David's, what then? Would she tell him? Would he come back? And if it was mine, a child conceived in the aftermath of betrayal, in the gray area between one relationship and another, what kind of beginning was that? What do you want to do? I finally asked. Claire took my hand, her fingers cold against mine. I don't know yet, but whatever I decide, whatever we decide, it has to be for the right reasons, not out of guilt or obligation. I nodded, bringing her hand to my lips. Whatever you decide, I'm here. She leaned her head against my shoulder. I need time to think. That evening, we sat on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Claire had been quiet all day, moving through the house like a ghost, touching her stomach absently from time to time. I'd given her space, busying myself with small projects, trying not to push. I've been thinking about timing, she said finally, about when things end and begin. I waited, letting her find her words. David and I, We were over long before he walked out that door. Months, maybe years before. We were just going through the motions. She turned to me, her eyes reflecting the dying light. But I need to be sure that what's between us isn't just reaction. That I'm not just running from one brother to another because it feels safe. The words stung, but I understood them. And what have you decided? That I need to stand on my own for a while. Figure out who Claire is without David, without you, without anyone defining her. She took my hand. I'm keeping the baby, but I need to do it on my terms. You're asking me to leave, I said, the realization settling like lead in my stomach. I'm asking for time, space to breathe, to make sure that when we come together, if we come together, it's because we're choosing each other, not just falling into something because it was there. I stood, walking to the edge of the porch, gripping the railing until my knuckles turned white. Behind me, I could hear Claire's quiet breathing, patient and steady. And if it's my child, I asked, not turning around, then you'll be its father, regardless of what happens between us. And if it's David's? A long pause. Then I'll face that reality too. I turned to look at her, this woman who had turned my world upside down in the space of a month. She sat straight-backed in the porch chair, one hand resting protectively over her stomach, her eyes clear and direct. There was a strength in her that I'd always seen but never fully appreciated until now. I love you, I said, the words simple and true. That won't change, no matter whose child it is, no matter how much time you need. A small smile touched her lips. I love you too. That's why I need to be sure. The next morning, I packed my things while Claire was at a doctor's appointment. I left a note on the kitchen counter with my new address and phone number. When you're ready, if you're ready, I'll be there. I signed it simply, yours, James. As I loaded the last box into my car, I looked back at the house where everything had changed. Through the front window, I could see the empty spaces where David's things had been, the walls now patched and repainted. A house in transition, just like the woman who lived there. 3 months later, Claire called me. It's a girl, she said, her voice strong and clear through the phone. And she's yours. Are you sure? I asked, my heart pounding. DNA doesn't lie. Neither does the timeline, now that I've had proper dating scans. I closed my eyes, relief and terror washing over me in equal measure. Can I see you? Both of you. A pause. Yes. I think it's time. When I arrived at her new apartment, Claire opened the door wearing a simple blue dress that highlighted the gentle curve of her growing belly. Her hair was longer, her face softer somehow. She stepped back to let me in, and I entered cautiously, feeling like a visitor in a foreign land. You look beautiful, I said. I look pregnant, she replied with a small smile. We sat on her couch, maintaining a careful distance. She told me about her doctor's appointments, her plans for the nursery, the name she was considering. I told her about my new job, my apartment, the therapy I'd been attending to work through my complicated feelings about David, about her, about the choices we'd made. I've missed you, she said finally, more than I expected to. I've missed you too. Every day. Claire reached for my hand, bridging the gap between us. I'm still figuring things out, still healing, but I know I want you in our daughter's life. And I hope, I want you in mine too. I squeezed her hand gently. I can work with that. She smiled, then guided my palm to rest against her rounded stomach. Beneath my hand, I felt a flutter, the smallest movement like a butterfly's wing. She knows her father, Claire whispered. In that moment, feeling my daughter move beneath my palm, I understood that there would always be complications. That David would eventually learn the truth. That our families would have opinions and judgments. That the timing of it all would raise eyebrows and whispers. But I also understood that sometimes the most broken beginnings can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. That love, messy, complicated, inconvenient love, can grow in the most unlikely soil. I shouldn't have touched her, but she was crying. My brother's wife. Now there's a child growing inside her that might be mine. No, not might be. Is. A daughter with my blood in her veins. A new life born from the ashes of what came before. I only meant to help my sister-in-law pack. I never meant for any of this to happen. But as I feel my daughter kick against my palm, as I look into Claire's eyes and see possibility instead of regret, I can't bring myself to wish it undone. Some mistakes are worth making. Some sins worth carrying. Some love's worth the price they demand. And this fragile, complicated love growing between the three of us just might be worth everything.